Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 6, Episode 11. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we're going to jump right back into analysis and assessment of the Gateway process. This is the Department of Defense report written by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell, along with his associate Itzhak Bentov, who was a bioengineer. We've had some very interesting perspectives from these professionals, from these scientists, and their explanation of what the Gateway Experience tapes are, and more importantly, how and why the tapes work. And they've had to really break it down to, trying to explain to us how the universe itself works. And that's been pretty amazing so far. So let's continue on with where we left off on section 25, Our Place in Time. The observed distribution of galaxies suggests that our particular universe is located near the top of the egg at the point where matter begins to fall back on itself, thus explaining the reason why the galaxies to the north are seen to be moving away more rapidly as they are caught up in the downturn of the stream of matter towards the far end of the cosmic egg. See Exhibit 5. Okay. Yep, very interesting, very cool pictures trying to explain what we're talking about there. So again, he talked about the universe being egg-shaped or ovid. I compared it to our resonant energy balloon, where the energy is flowing out of the top of our head. He says that is the white hole. That's where the energy flows out. So he's saying our universe has went upwards and is now somewhere here as we're going back down the sides of the egg, right? Or back down the sides of our resonant energy balloon as the energy flows back down towards our feet. Our feet is the black hole, which draws the energy back into it, swirling it into that spiral motion as it goes up through our chakras, refilling our chakras, using the Kundalini along with all of these other tools that we've been learning, right? Swirling that energy around in our mind, and then again expelling it out, creating that energy out of the top of our heads again. So he's saying that our universe is on that way down, that because we're seeing other universes, other galaxies falling faster away from us because they're on the downward turn, versus the other galaxies that are behind us, they're still trying to fight their way out of the white hole, up the side of the egg before they start going down. So layered over this cosmic egg is the absolute, which sustains the radiating nucleus from which the original jet of matter issued forth. As the stream of matter moves around the ovid towards its destination at the black hole, where it will be reabsorbed into the radiating nucleus, and then the absolute, it generates the interference pattern within the cosmic egg, which constitutes the universal hologram of Taurus. Since the Taurus is being simultaneously generated by matter in all the various phases of time, it reflects the development of the universe in the past, present, and future, as it would be seen from our particular perspective in one phase of time. So again, it's kind of interesting that the creation of the universe, the creation of life, again, if we think of it as our resonant energy balloon in our physical bodies, it's starting at that bottom chakra and it's flowing upwards, and then the creation of life is spilling from the top of our head. And it'll be interesting because if our universe really is in some type of egg shape, and we're falling down now, that means our universe, or our galaxy, is headed towards a black hole. I wonder what's going to happen once we get there. By reflecting on this model, it becomes possible to see how human consciousness brought into a sufficiently altered focused state could obtain information concerning the past, present, and future, since they all exist in the universal hologram simultaneously. In the case of the future, because all of the consequences of the past and present can be seen coming together in the hologram, such that the future can be predicted or seen with total accuracy. Okay. That I do agree with in some ways. Because of science, because of math, because of calculations and estimates, we can predict what is going to happen in the future. Okay, tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to come down here to this room and the walls are going to be red and this table is going to be here, right? We can predict that those type of things are going to happen because a pattern has already been created. But just because we see a pattern doesn't mean that that's the future. Okay, again, that's what I mean by the future hasn't been written yet. We can predict all kinds of things that might occur and might happen, but we don't know for certain. That's the beauty of life. That's the importance of life. That's the importance of the one life that we have. Live it to the fullest, because you never know. Moreover, it is possible to see how the implosion of energy patterns would cross and recross to create an incredibly complex four-dimensional hologram or torus in spiral shape in reflection of the multi-dimensional developing pattern of evolution. All the movements of the energies which comprise the universe leave their mark and hence tell their story throughout time. It's beautiful. This is amazing. Very deep, huge things that he's talking about here. But again, I see this as the as above, so below. He's talking about the universe being basically shaped, and you'll see it in these pictures. I'll try to get them more clear on the screen. But it looks a lot like our resonant energy balloon, right? Section 26, quality of consciousness. Okay. We noted earlier that the out-of-body state involves projection of a major portion of the energy pattern that represents human consciousness so that it may move either freely throughout the terrestrial sphere for purposes of information acquisition or into other dimensions outside of time-space, perhaps to interact with other forms of consciousness within the universe. Okay, we got to reread that. That was awesome. Okay. The out-of-body state involves projection of the major portion of the energy pattern that represents human consciousness. So again, human consciousness is a representation of energy patterns that can move freely throughout the terrestrial sphere, which I think they're just talking about our Earth and, locale 1, right? For the purposes of information acquisition, which we've talked about, that's what remote viewing is. That's what we're using that for, right? We're trying to gather information. Or going outside of locale 1, moving further into other dimensions outside of time and space to interact with other forms of consciousness. So we did talk about, Monroe said, if you want to experience other life forms, your spirit body can go experience what it's like to live in other species of life forms. I mean, pretty wild. Consciousness is the organizing and sustaining principle that provides the impetus and guidance to bring and keep energy in motion within a given set of parameters so that a specific reality will result. Our soul or our spirit animates our physical body by a set of parameters, laws of nature, laws of reality, right? All that type of stuff. We can't fly because we have a physical body and it just doesn't work that way, right? There are certain laws that we have to live within in order to be inside the physical universe. When energy returns to a state, When consciousness reaches a state of sophistication in which it can perceive itself, its own hologram, it reaches the point of self-cognition. Human beings have this form of elevated consciousness, as does the Absolute, but in case of the latter, it is a function of energy and its associated quality of consciousness in infinity, omniscience and omnipotence in perpetual unity. So again, once your consciousness reaches a state of sophistication, it says, basically, when we're kids, we're not aware of our own consciousness, right? But eventually, you start to have your very first memories and stuff, and you kind of snap into consciousness, and you say, oh, okay, I am alive. That's your consciousness becoming more sophisticated. And again, I do believe that animals, and probably plants, have their own consciousness as well. They just can't communicate it the way that we do. So let's not talk too bad about our other mammals and stuff, right? Anyways, when energy returns to a state of total rest within the Absolute, it returns to the continuum of consciousness in the pool of limitless, timeless perception that resides there. Thus, the more complex an energy system in the material state, the more consciousness it possesses to maintain its reality. Our consciousness, therefore, is that differentiated aspect of the universal consciousness which resides within the Absolute. It accounts for the organization of the energy patterns which constitute our physical body, but is distinctly separate from and superior to it. That's right, we are more than our physical body. Since consciousness exists quite apart from and outside our reality, beyond the bounds of time-space, it, like the Absolute, has neither beginning nor end. Reality has both a beginning and an end because it is bound within time-space. But the fundamental quantum of energy and its associated consciousness is eternal. When reality ends, its constituent energy simply returns to infinity in the Absolute. That's right. I mean, I think at some point, like I've said before, I think the energy that makes up our universe eventually dissipates. It cannot go on forever. And just because there is a lack of energy, a lack of frequency, motion, right, doesn't mean that it all comes to an end. It's just a different state of being. Section 27. Consciousness in perspective. Section 27. Consciousness in perspective. Having ascertained that human consciousness is able to separate from physical reality and interact with other intelligences in other dimensions within the universe, and that it is both eternal and destined for ultimate return to the Absolute, we are faced with the question, so what happens then? Since memory is a function of consciousness and therefore enjoys the same eternal character as the consciousness which accounts for its existence, it must be admitted that when consciousness returns to the Absolute, it brings with it all the memories it has accumulated through experience in reality. And we've talked about that before. The Absolute, the universe, God, the Akashic Records, whatever you want to call it, I believe that all the experiences of mankind, specifically in mankind, but also whatever other life forms are out there in the universe, our memories all go into that database, right? And that's how we're able to access them. That's where we can manipulate time, space in our out-of-body state, because something is holding all of these memories together, right? And I don't know. It's interesting reading through this because, again, these military men, these scientists, I think these guys may have taken some mushrooms themselves or maybe some acid, because they are getting into some very deep stuff here. So we have another picture here of what Bentov thinks the galaxy or our universe looks like. Again, very closely represented as our resonant energy balloon. I think it looks very close. So let's continue on. So this was, Section 27, Consciousness and Perspective. The return of consciousness to the absolute does not imply an extinction of the separate entity within the consciousness organized and sustained in reality. Rather, it suggests a differentiated consciousness which merges with and participates in the universal consciousness and infinity of the absolute without losing the separate identity and accumulated self-knowledge which its memories confer upon it. What it does lose is the capability for generation of independent thought holograms, since that can only be done by energy and motion. Exactly what we've talked about before. If we think of the absolute as a cloud, each of us are a raindrop. That is our spirit. It comes from the one, right? It comes from the cloud, goes down as an individual drop. We experience life here in our physical planet, and then we evaporate back up into the cloud. We take with us all of our memories, and we get swirled back into that cloud, back into the absolute, back into God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? We bring with us our memories. We still maintain our independence, our independent consciousness, but again, now we go back to the whole. I think that's what, Monroe was calling it, WHOLE, right? I think that's what we're talking about here. He's just doing it with some different language here. And it says, since memories and stuff can only be created, only done by energy and motion, all he's talking about there is, the spirit coming down to the physical body. Because the physical body, it's constantly in motion, and we know that, right? We've talked about that already. In other words, it retains the power to perceive, but loses the power of will or choice. In exchange, however, this consciousness participates in the all-knowing infinite continuum of consciousness, which is a characteristic of energy in the ever-present. Consequently, it is accurate to observe that when a person experiences the out-of-body state, he is, in fact, projecting that eternal spark of consciousness and memory, which constitutes the ultimate source of his identity, to let it play in and learn from dimensions both inside and outside the time-space world, in which his physical component currently enjoys a short period of reality. We do have a very short time here. It is our one and only opportunity. It's a special gift to become that individual spirit, that individual drop. And the author does say we lose our power of choice and our power of will when we return to the absolute. But don't let that scare you. Freedom and power of choice and willpower and all that, those are concepts for here in the real world, right? We don't want to be physically held down in a cage, right? Nobody wants that. We want the freedom to be able to move wherever we want. That's a physical world thing, but it's a separation. We're separated from each other. We're separated from the absolute. The closest that we come to not being separated is when we, procreate, is when we have children. When two people become one, there's less separation there, but it's still a separation. But ultimately, there's something that we should be thankful for and can, in a way, look forward to and be comforted by, that we do return to the absolute, that we do return to the whole. And that's nice. That's comforting. That feels good. We're not going to be separate and alone forever. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, these are the same concepts you hear in the Abrahamic faiths. You hear this kind of talk a lot about in Christianity, being separated from the Father and returning to the bosom of the Lord and all that shit, right? I mean, that's just their version. I don't like that flavor. But this, I like this more, right? But maybe it's ultimately the same story that's being told. Section 28, Gateway Method. Having put the gateway experience in context by postulating a structural outline of how and why it seems to work, and having shown what it is designed to achieve, the time has come to examine the specific techniques which comprise the gateway training process. These techniques are designed to enable the user of the gateway tapes to manipulate the high energy states which can be achieved if the user continues to work with the tapes over a period of time. Sustainably, systematically, patiently. The amount of time required to reach advanced energy states and to fully exploit the techniques varies with the individual. The sensitivity of his nervous system, his general state of mind, and the extent to which he may have previously developed facility in related techniques, such as transcendental meditation, are all pertinent factors affecting the speed at which he may expect to progress. Again, be patient, because everybody's going to have their own timeline. Some of you may just be born with it, and maybe can slide right into these different states of being. Some of you have done training in other things like yoga and transcendental meditation and stuff like that, and you bring those techniques with you. And some of you may be beginning this might be your first step into doing any of this type of stuff. And maybe you're even coming at a place like we've talked about before, where you still have to remove the societal wet blankets of religion and society and culture and all of those things that have been placed upon you, forced upon you by who you were born to, where you were born, right? Again, look around. Look at everything around you. All of the things that you were told to believe were told to you by your society and your culture. Take a moment to let that sink in before you continue to believe in those things, right? Take a moment to evaluate what you've been told is real, because it doesn't have to be anymore. This helps us change that, right? The gateway process begins by teaching the individual participant to isolate extraneous concerns in a visualization device called an energy conversion box. Now we're getting back to the heart of things here, folks. Next, the participant is introduced to a method of encouraging his mind and body to strive to achieve a state of resonance through utterance of a single tone, a monotonous, protracted humming sound that sets up a feeling of vibration, particularly in the head. He engages in this resonant tuning, as it is called, by humming along with a chorus of such sounds that are contained on the gateway tape. Following this, the participant is exposed to the gateway affirmation and is encouraged to repeat it to himself as he hears it repeated on the tape. This affirmation is a statement to the effect that the individual realizes that he is more than merely a physical body and that he deeply desires to expand his consciousness. That's right, folks. Our preparatory process. That's exactly what he was just explaining. Section 29, hemi-sync introduced. After that, he is exposed for the first time to the hemi-sync sound frequencies and is encouraged to focus on and develop a perception of and appreciation for those feelings which accompany the synchronization of brainwaves that results. Again, I like that. We're encouraged to develop a perception and appreciation of the feelings that come with hemi-sync. Yeah, we've talked about it. You're going to learn to love this state of being. It feels amazing. You're not going to want to leave it. Next comes the technique of progressive and systematic physical relaxation, while the hemi-sync frequencies are expanded to include additional forms of pink and white noise. I've never heard of pink noise before. Designed to put the physical body at the virtual threshold of sleep, as well as to calm the left hemisphere of the mind, while raising the right hemisphere to a state of heightened attentiveness. I like that. Because then when you're experiencing it, you feel like your right brain, the side of your brain that takes in your physical senses, you feel like that's the part that's going to sleep. But the author here is saying that the right brain is actually becoming more attentive. Again, that's where our intuition lies. That's where our creativity lies. But it's the calculation of those senses by the left brain that's maybe subduing, right? That's an interesting way of looking at it, is maybe we're just doing less calculations, right? That's interesting. I like that. Once all of this is achieved, the participant is invited to envision creation of an energy balloon. That's right. Comprised of an energy flow beginning at the center of the top of the head and extending down in all directions to the feet. The energy involved in this flow then proceeds up through the body and back into the balloon pattern again. The energy balloon, which sets up a pattern very reminiscent of the cosmic egg discussed earlier, not only enhances bodily energy flow and encourages early achievement of a suitable resonant state, but it is also designed to provide protection against conscious entities possessing lower energy levels, which the participant might encounter in the event that he achieves an out-of-body state. I'm telling you, folks, this is my first time reading through this. I'm reading through this with you right now, and exactly like I had predicted when Bentov was talking earlier about the universe being shaped like an egg, an obid, right? I was saying it sounds a lot like the resonant energy balloon, and they just tie it together right here. That's amazing. That is awesome. And I like this where it says the resonant energy balloon basically protects you from conscious entities possessing lower energy levels we might encounter. That's right, folks. All those low energy vibration monsters out there that we're supposed to be keeping an eye out for. Again, there is no fear here in the Mind War. Anything that we run into outside of the body, there's nothing to fear. Nothing can harm us out there. The work that we do here in our human body prepares us to be one of the most powerful beings in the universe. We are promised that before we start our journey, and I believe it to be true. So let's finish up with section 29 here, hemi-sync introduced. It serves a precautionary purpose in the unlikely event that the participant's first out-of-body experience involves direct projection outside the terrestrial sphere. So again, I guess they're saying if you're a first-timer, but you're very powerful, again, you have those natural instincts, and you pop right out of all the different layers that we have to go through to kind of exit the earth and move into our astral travel and things like that. He says the resonant energy balloon helps protect you if you just pop right out of there. So let's go to our next section here. It says advanced techniques. Okay, here we go. This is going to be a little bit of review, so we're just going to whip through it here. It says, having reached focus 10, the participant is now ready to endeavor to achieve a state of sufficiently expanded awareness to begin actually interacting with dimensions beyond those associated with the experience of physical reality. This state is called Focus 12 and involves conscious efforts on his part while additional forms of pink and white noise enter the sound stream being directed into his ears from the gateway tape. Once the participant has achieved this state of greatly expanded awareness, he is ready to begin employing a series of specific techniques or tools, as the Monroe Institute characterizes them, which enable him to manipulate the newly found expanded awareness to obtain practical, useful feedback of value for promoting self-discovery and personal growth. Again, that's self-help. The specific techniques involved are described individually below. So again, Focus 12, the expanded state of awareness. We've talked about that before. You kind of visualize it as that white static energy. Your perception is the white static energy expanding outside of your physical brain. And your mind is now out here around you. And you're allowed and able to achieve and perceive things outside of your physical mind. It's a beautiful feeling. It's one of those early stages, right? And when we are in that stage of expanded awareness, we can, A, do problem solving. This technique involves identifying fundamental problems which the individual wishes to see solved, filling his expanded awareness with his perception of these problems, and then projecting them out into the universe. We've talked about that. You send your problems out into the universe, and in this way, the individual enlists the assistance of what Monroe Institute calls his higher self. Again, we are helping ourselves. In other words, his expanded consciousness to interact with the universal hologram to obtain the information required to solve the problem. Again, we project our problems out into the universe, and the higher self that we are communicating with is us after we've passed away. Once we pass away, we can go back in time. And since we haven't passed away yet, anything that we're doing here in the present, right, is the past to you in the future who's going to pass away. I hope all this makes sense, right? So you can go back. You're sending the question out to your higher self, the self who has already lived your life and passed, that spirit. Someday in the future when you die, your spirit is going to go into the beyond, and it's going to have access to go backwards, and that's who we're communicating with. We realized this. This revelation came up not too long ago, that the entities that we are interacting with are ourselves, our own spirit, coming back to help us, right? Our higher selves. And again, when we send our questions out into the universe, that's why I've said the answer comes from within. That's the as above, so below. You're helping yourself. You're communicating with yourself. It's beautiful. This approach may be used to solve personal difficulties, technical problems in the realm of physics, mathematics, etc., practical administrative problems, and so on. Responses to the problem-solving technique may be received almost immediately, but often they come based on developing intuition over the next 2 or 3 days. Frequently, the response comes in the form of a sudden, holistic perception in which the individual suddenly finds that he simply knows the answer in all of its ramifications and completely in context, as if he's already lived it and he's going back and telling himself, here's what's going to happen. Sometimes without even being able to put his newly found perception into words, at least initially. In some cases, the response may even arrive in the form of visual symbols, which the individual see with his mind while he is in Focus 12 state, in which he will have to interpret after he returns to normal consciousness. These are scientists. This is a DOD lieutenant colonel saying these things. This is the outside source that's reviewing what is going on here and telling us this is what they've found in their studies and their experiences, the same way that we've been doing here over these last 9, 10, 11 months. It's going to be a full year here on the Mind War going through the Gateway program. Amazing. Amazing stuff that's happening here. To have it reiterated to us like this from someone who we can say these are authoritative figures in the military, in science, and to have them reiterate back to us exactly what's going on is amazing. And we should all be thankful for it. B, patterning. This technique involves use of the consciousness to achieve desired objectives in the physical, emotional, and intellectual sphere. It involves concentration on the desired objective while in focus 12 state, extension of the individual's perception of that objective into the whole expanded consciousness, and already a matter of established achievement, which is destined to be realized within the time frame specified. The particular methodology is based on the belief that the thought patterns generated by our consciousness in a state of expanded awareness create holograms which represent the situation we desire to bring about and, in doing so, establish the basis for actual realization of that goal. Once the thought-generated hologram of the sought-after objective is established in the universe, it becomes an aspect of reality which interacts with the universal hologram to bring about the desired objective, which might not, under other circumstances, ever occur. He's talking about there is no manifestation without imagination. This is the fucking secret. That book that came out a while ago, this is what all of the, all the elites are using this. This is all where all the conspiracies stem from about occultism and all that. That's what he's talking about right here. Without imagining the future that you want, you'll never achieve it. Imagination brings about manifestation. You have to imagine it first. And again, without going too off topic, this is why my friend Joe, aka Daog, from the 12 Tribes Judeo-Christian cult, they teach their children not to have imagination. They're doing the exact opposite of what we talk about here. Instead, for them, it's more important to follow this awful set of rules. That's how they think life should be achieved. To get to some determined end state. Just awful what they're doing to their own people and what they're teaching them. And it's the opposite here, what we're doing. This is what people are talking about. This is what people are looking for. This is the answer that you've wanted. And it's saying right here in scientific mumbo jumbo, imagination leads to manifestation. You have to visualize the thing that you want. The person you want to be, visualize that. And then you'll become it. You'll find the pattern. The path will start to create itself. Just like he's saying here, you've created the hologram. It's floating out there in the universe now. This imaginative thing that you've created. But you're sitting back here and you understand it's going to take years to get there and you don't know how, but you've already imagined it. And now that path is going to start to form. Just like those thought patterns in your mind, as we do this work, we're creating new, connections in our mind, right? It's moving. The path is being created to the future that you want. In other words, the technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence the development of reality in time-space as it applies to us, and those thoughts can be projected with adequate intensity. However, the more complicated the objective sought, and the more radically it departs from our current reality, the more time and universal hologram we need to reorient our reality sphere to accommodate our desires. Monroe trainers caution against attempting to force the pace of this process because the individual could succeed in dislocating his existing reality with drastic consequences. Holy shit. Holy shit, dude. Be careful out there, folks. Don't try to force it. The few things that I've tried to force, and we'll talk about this more because this is more on the spiritual side, when those emotions and your childlike emotions and you're responding to them in childish ways and thinking that you want this or thinking that you want that, instead of processing and having more adult and more concrete thoughts and decisions, in the beginning, you're going to try to force stuff, but they're going to give you an ultimatum. They're going to tell you, I'll give you exactly what you want, but it's going to cost you. I've got that fucking deal over and over and over again. And they tell me, you want this? It's going to cost you this. And I keep telling them no. They keep coming with the same deal. And the answer is no. The answer is no. Because those things that I thought I wanted weren't what I wanted or needed. They were distractions. They moved away from the current path that I'm on right now. And now I'm starting to understand that. And now we're going with the flow, man. We're going to be chill, if you will. C, color breathing. The next technique is called color breathing and is designed to use the expanded awareness and highly focused attentive associated with the Focus 12 state to imagine various colors in a particularly intense and vivid manner so as to use them to resonate with and in turn to activate the body's own energies. Fundamentally, in terms of practical application, it is a healing technique which is designed to restore the body and to enhance its physical capabilities by balancing, revitalizing, and retuning bodily energy flows. Again, resonant energy balloon. You're refilling your chakras. You're seeing the different colors light up. The Kundalini is part of that because the Kundalini is the actual chemicals that are going to be flowing from your groin when you sustain yourself. It is predicated on the principle that the body's electromagnetic field is capable of altering its resonance pattern so as to entrain energy from the Earth's electrostatic field for its own use. The various colors envisioned in the imagination as part of the technique cue the mind as to which frequencies and what specific amplitudes are desired in connection with the entrainment and the subsequent alterations in bodily energy flow patterns. The color has the capacity to affect the human mind is well known, and effectuality of color in certain kinds of healing is a demonstrable fact. For example, application of an intense blue light to an area of physical tumescence leads to relatively rapid and easily observable reduction in the swelling, while red, and to a lesser extent yellow, have quite the opposite effect. However, in the hemi-sync application of the technique, external light sources are not involved, but rather the mind is the sole agent of the healing and revitalization. So again, that's why we focus that healing color of purple, and we direct it using our energy toolbar, our magic wand, to those parts of our body in the living body map that might be flickering or the different colors are fading, right? D, the energy toolbar, magic wands. I've never read anywhere of the energy toolbar being described as a magic wand. I came up with that on my own early on in the series. When I first listened to the Gateway Experience tapes, I knew that was a magic wand. I knew that's what Monroe was talking about. And here we see, again, a scientist, a military man, describing the energy toolbar as a magic wand. Just amazing. Magic wands and enchanted scepters have been part of the folklore and occult practices of many cultures. The scepters, staffs, and maces carried by monarchs and high priests alike occur with such frequency in history that bygone eras as to suggest that at the very least these items are aspects of some type of archetypal symbol which the human mind seems to appreciate, perhaps quite subliminally. This is what we're talking about, folks. occult folklore throughout the ages, the scepters, the staffs that we see in the pictures of all the greatest people in the world. It's at your fingertips. It's right here. This is what I've been trying to share with you. And now here in plain English, we're seeing it. This is amazing. I'm reading through this with you right now for the very first time. In any case, the energy toolbar technique involves envisioning a small, intensely pulsating dot of light with which the participant charges in his imagination with enormous energy until it is virtually pulsating. The participant then extrudes the dot into the shape of a sparkling, vibrating cylinder of energy, which he then uses to channel force from the universe to selected parts of his body for purposes of healing and revitalization. Amazing. E. Remote viewing. In addition, the energy toolbar is used as a portal for initiating the follow-on technique called remote viewing. Remember, we take the energy toolbar, we connect it into our brain, we extend the other end out of the bar to wherever we want to remote view. In this context, the participant turns his bar of energy into a whirling vortex, which he sends his imagination in search of new and illuminating insights. That is it. We talked about that. We're sending our imagination through the portal to remote view. We are imagining the things that we're viewing. And the beauty is that when you do it over time, you start to actually see what is there. It's part of that intuition. The apparent purpose of the symbolism involved in the vortex seems to be to cue the subconscious and convey to it instructions as to what the participant wishes to do, but in terms of nonverbal symbols, which the right hemisphere of the mind is capable of understanding. It's why symbolism is everywhere. Any of you who are out there talking about occultism, especially with the elites and the music industry and movies and government and everything, you see the symbols everywhere. They've been shoving it in our fucking face our whole lives, and now we're starting to understand it. We're starting to understand how to use it. It's up to you now. F. Living body map. This technique provides amplification for application of the energy toolbar as a means of healing specific areas or symptoms of the human body. The configuration of the participant's body is imagined, and then the various major systems, such as the nervous and circulatory systems, are envisioned in appropriate colors within the confines of the outline being held in the imagination. Again, you're looking at you're seeing yourself in the mirror, your silhouette, and it's glowing different colors. The energy toolbar is then applied to energizing, balancing, and healing in whatever manner the participant desires. In the process, the participant visualizes various streams of colored energy flowing out of the tool into the organ system or area upon which the revitalizing or healing application is being made. Since colors are the result of differing wavelengths of light, which is to say energy or various frequencies, this technique operates on the assumption that as the human body is composed of energy, it can be vitalized and healed through the additive application of additional energy, provided that the energy is applied in the appropriate form. It's amazing to think that, again, if we have a red light, shining on our forearm, that red light could be powerful enough to where it starts to burn it and actually, hurt your skin, right? But if it's a blue light, maybe it would even be more cooling and calming. And so you think of that you can do that same thing just within your imagination. It's absolutely amazing. Focus 15, travel into past. This is G. All of the preceding techniques are conducted at the level of expanded awareness known as Focus 12. However, the technique of time travel into the past involves further expansion of consciousness through the inclusion of additional levels of sound on the hemi-sync tapes. Some of the sound is probably merely an intensification of the basic hemi-sync frequencies, being designed to further modify brainwave frequency and amplitude. Other aspects of the added sound patterns appear to be designed to provide subtle, almost subliminal suggestions to the mind as to what is desired by way of further expanded consciousness, so as to support the verbal suggestions and instructions also contained in the tape. When he's talking about subliminal, He's not talking about quiet words that are being whispered to you. No, he's talking about when the sound moves from your left ear to your right ear, and the sound moves your consciousness in that direction, right? And then they add verbal instructions as the sound is moving to your right. They then say, picture yourself moving to the right now, and then you roll out of your body, right? That's what they're talking about, subliminal sounds, right? Even the instructions are highly symbolic, with time being visualized as a huge wheel in the universe with various spokes, each of which gives access to a different part of the participant's past. Focus 15 is a very advanced state and is extremely difficult to achieve. So congratulations. That's amazing. We've done it. We've done Focus 15, no problem, over and over again. We've blown past it. Probably less than 5% of all participants in any given gateway experience actually fully achieve the Focus 15 state during the course of their approximately 7 days of training. No. There ain't no 7 days of fucking training here. We've already talked about that. We're not going to the MZOO Institute to shack up in a room with some other dork 2 or 3 times a day trying to listen to the tapes while we're sober-minded, eating dirty old cafeteria food. Sorry, MZOO Institute, but it ain't going to work that way. It's cool that you invite people there to, maybe teach them a little bit, but this is the way to achieve Focus 15 over and over again. This is the way to experience the tapes, the way that we're talking about it here in the Mind War. You do it at home. You prepare yourself. You take 90 days of sobriety before you even get started. You use the enhancements of psilocybin and THC. This isn't going to be done in an institutional setting. That's where you're going to fail. That's why it says only 5%. I'm telling you, 100% of the people that follow the Mind War and go through the Gateway Experience program the way that we're doing it here in the Mind War, 100% achieve these states. Nonetheless, MZOO Institute trainers affirm that with enough practice, eventually Focus 15 can be achieved. They also state that not only the individual's past history is available for examination by one who has achieved Focus 15, but other aspects of the past with which the individual himself has had no connection may also be assessed. Focus 21, the future. The last and most advanced of all the focus states associated with the Gateway Training Program involves movement outside of the boundaries of time-space, as in Focus 15, but with attention to discovering the future rather than the past. The individual who has achieved this state has reached a truly advanced level, except in unusual circumstances. It is probably not attainable except by those who have conditioned themselves through long application of meditation, or by those who have practiced long and hard enough through use of the hemi-sync tapes for a period of months, if not years. You goddamn right. And what we discover in Focus 21 and beyond is not necessarily the future that occurs here in physical life, right? But more exploring the future of what comes after our life, right? That's the important difference. It's one thing to go and say, oh, we're going to go visit the garden. We're going to then explore the garden and go to the planning center, the coordination center, the healing and rejuvenation center, going to the educational opportunities, right? We're going to explore those different areas. That's not the same as saying, oh, the future is already written for us and these things are going to happen in our lives and then we're going to die on this day. And all. That's not it, right? That's way different. And again, we hear things that AI can predict when you're dying, all that stuff. Again, they're just predicting patterns. That's all. It still doesn't mean that the future is known, right? All right, so that was section 30. A long one called Advanced Techniques. That was all beautiful stuff, all a great revisiting of all of those amazing tools that we learned throughout our process so far. And our final section on today, this long episode, I told you folks, we have to get through this here. We've got to put in the work. Section 31, the out-of-body movement. This remarkable phenomenon has been saved for discussion in detail until last because of the interest which it occasions and special circumstances involved in its attainment. MZOO Institute stresses that the Gateway program was not established solely for the purpose of enabling participants to obtain the out-of-body state, nor does the program guarantee that most participants will succeed in doing it during their course of the training at the Institute. Only one tape out of the many which make up the Gateway experience is devoted to the techniques involved in the out-of-body movement. Again, you're not going to experience it in a week doing it sober at some institute. It's going to take you weeks, months, years. You're going to do it at home in a place where you're comfortable with the enhancements of psilocybin and THC. Basically, these techniques are merely designed to make it easier for the individual to achieve the out-of-body state when his brainwave pattern and personal energy levels have reached a point that he is in apparent harmony with his surrounding electromagnetic environment, such that he feels that he has reached the threshold where separation is a possibility. To facilitate achieving the out-of-body state, Bob Monroe, the founder of MZOO Institute, is quoted in a recent magazine article as saying that in order to assist the participant, the particular hemi-sync tape concerned with that technique employs beta signals of around 2877.3 cycles per second. Since 30 to 40 cycles per second is considered to be the normal range for beta brainwave signals, those associated with the wakeful state, it is apparent that the MZOO Institute is convinced that the same heightened state of brainwave frequency output, which promotes altered states of consciousness, is also an important consideration in assisting in achieving the out-of-body states. The actual techniques employed for separating from the body involve such simple maneuvers as rolling out, lifting out after the fashion of a telephone pole, wherein the individual separates in a rigid, head-first manner, such that he finds himself standing at attention at the foot of his physical body and sliding out through either end of his body. Okay, that was section 31, letting us know that we're going to get deeper into the out-of-body movement, the actual process of having the out-of-body experience. That was sections 25 through 31 of analysis and assessment of the Gateway process. And we are going to do a deep dive into Wave 8 Union, Tape 5, the Planning Center, in just a moment. All right, folks, let's start our deep dive into Wave 8 Union, Tape 5, the Planning Center. So I did Wave 8, Tape 5, and Tape 6 last night. Very interesting tapes. Kind of a departure from what we've been doing recently. And we're going to kind of listen to this together because, to be honest, I don't know that if I could even explain anything that happened last night without listening to what I recorded. So let's see what I had to say about Wave 8, Tape 5.
Tape 8-5. Go to focus 27 to our special place, and I started at the under the awning, under the gazebo here at the Mind War Manor. I was there with Mother Mind War, and I was there with Father Mind War. And I could only see them in my peripheral vision out of my left side. So I couldn't look directly at them, but I could see and feel them there with me. And the narrator said to go to...
So, getting into focus 27, going to the special place. For me, I've just been going to the gazebo in the backyard here at the Mind War Manor, just outside the kitchen. You walk through, there's a beautiful deck and a nice gazebo. I've been going there because it's easy to get to, right? It's just a few feet away. I can visualize it very easily because I see it on a daily basis now that I've been here. So I found myself there at night, where I often do spend time. There's lights all in it, and so I see myself there. My mother's there. Again, this is after she had passed. I had just listened to this 2 days ago, or last night. And so I knew she was there, but I know she had already passed. But my father was there with me too. And he was sleeping upstairs when I did this. So I remember kind of thinking like, oh, I wonder if he's going to join us. I wonder if he is in a dreamlike state where he could join us with what happens, and we'll go on.
Planning center. So Mother took my hand, and I followed with her, and we asked if Dad wanted to come, but he said no, he was sleeping, he wasn't ready yet. So I floated up. Mother Mind War knew exactly where she was going. And we get to the planning center, and the narrator.
So what I was visualizing, again, I could only see them kind of like out of the perception from my left side, my peripheral perception, right? And my mother's there, a very beautiful angelic version of her, right? Again, she has passed. Now my father was more on my right side. He was kind of more back here, peripheral. I could feel him here. And again, I wanted to grab his hand, but he was like, no, I don't want to go. But I held Mom's hand, and she was floating us up because the narrator told us to go to the planning center. Now, she knew exactly where it was. And it was very nice. It was very comforting to be there with her, right? It was a beautiful rendition of her. Very almost like a painting, right? An abstract painting. There wasn't a lot of detail. I just saw like her like brown hair and soft skin and everything, but there wasn't a lot of detail. It was very nice and comforting. And just holding her hand and just kind of floating behind her, right? Almost like in a movie or something. And she took us to the planning center, right?
Says that we're basically going to learn 3 lessons. So in the first one, he said we want to connect with new ways, new energy channels. So what I visualized was myself and other people out in the field. I could see like a beautiful blue sky. We were in a field with grasses that were like waist high, and you could kind of see trees in the distance and stuff, and we were running from something. We were dressed in bright clothes, but we were running, and there was fear. I was afraid, like we were being chased, but I couldn't tell if I was the thing doing the chasing and causing the fear, or if I was the person running from the thing and experiencing the fear. I think it was probably both. But the concept that came to me was a lot of these type of necessary chemicals and functions don't occur in our daily lives anymore because there isn't a lot of fear out there. We, for the most part, live comfortable lives. And so the idea of trying to figure out how to create these experiences without actually being in danger, that's a new thing to focus on. The next thing that...
So again, the narrator says you're going to learn new energy channels. And so what popped into my head as I'm running through this field, I see beautiful blue sky and bright colors. I see trees and grass that's maybe waist high. I'm running. I have like a bright colored shirt on. I see other people running that have bright colored shirts on. They're all kind of screaming a little bit, just I can tell that they're afraid. And so when it starts, I'm the one doing the running, but then all of a sudden I'm looking at myself through a third person version, like you're playing a video game, and I'm seeing myself running. So all of a sudden I put myself in the position of, oh, am I the thing chasing myself? And what was happening is I was getting butterflies in my stomach and having those kind of stress hormones and the adrenaline physically really pumping through my body. I was laying there, my heartbeat was beating faster, and it felt amazing. It felt good. because, as I get older, I'm living a more sedentary life. I don't have the same type of stresses that I used to have in my professional career, the same type of physical stresses that maybe when I was a Marine, things like that. So the thought was, how can I recreate some of those stress moments without also damaging myself, physically damaging myself by overstressing, which I've done in the past, whether it's over exerting myself physically through bad exercise techniques and just pushing myself too hard, which has left me kind of broken in a lot of pain in my mid 40s. So be careful out there, you young folks. But also, I did a lot of damage internally. That's where I think a lot of my chronic disease, my digestive disorder came from, was the stress that came from my job, my life. And then how do you deal with stress was to drink alcohol, which just made it worse, right? So there was a lot of physical damage that way. But this idea of how do we recreate some of these chemicals, because they also create adrenaline, which gets us pumped up and wants us to help us exercise. And when we get these bursts of energies, that also often comes with healing properties, right? This pain-free type feelings. When you get startled by something and you get that rush of adrenaline, all of a sudden your aches and pains go away because you're amped up and you're ready to go and you're ready to run, that fight or flight. So how can we achieve some of those things? Again, the kind of parallel to that is the Kundalini process, again, where you're not wasting these chemicals, but you're kind of recycling them, right? So, interesting concept. That was one of 3 lessons.
We talked about the next lesson was how do we continue to basically share in this concept of expanding human consciousness, and that was easy. That's to continue the Mind War podcast. And I visualized that by seeing myself laying in the grass in the backyard here at the Mind War Manor, and my body was beginning to decay, and mushrooms were growing from it, and it was this concept of sharing the information, sharing our experiences, not only through communication like we're doing here, but also doing it through the physical, other people being able to have their own experiences off of the mushrooms that grew from me. It was beautiful. It felt wonderful.
So again, the second lesson was basically, how do we continue this desire to help others understand the expansion of human consciousness and how to explore it. That's what we're doing here in the Mind War podcast. That was easy. That came right to me. Just continuing the work that we're doing here. And the visual representation of that was me lying in the backyard here in the tall grass. My body was dead, dying and decaying, and out of it mushrooms were growing, magic mushrooms, and the idea of others, of all of you folks being able to eat those mushrooms and physically ingest the experiences that I've had. It's symbolic. It was a beautiful symbolism. It felt very nice, and it's fun to share those type of visuals. That's what I was experiencing. When the narrator tells you, now experience this, the dreamlike state occurs, that locale too, where you're just creating these things and you're envisioning them yourself, it really is beautiful. It feels great. The third lesson.
And the third lesson was basically the narrator said, think of this connection to information and how information is shared. I thought that was very strange that he was asking us to do this. It made me think of the internet, especially being an information technology specialist for most of my life. And he said, think of a new concept. And so what I visualized was a hand coming down to the earth, a giant hand, and the internet, all the cables and connections and the servers, all the backbone of the internet we call it the World Wide Web. And this hand came down and basically pinched the web and pulled the entire web off of the planet. And it all stuck together. It was all still connected. And this hand formed it into a black cube. And that black cube was now floating around in Earth's atmosphere. And we were connected to it through satellites. So our devices that we use connect to it. But in the black cube, that's where the servers, the AI, the actual processing is done. So it no longer has to be done here on Earth, but instead it's floating out in space. I'm sure this is a concept that's already been talked about, but this is what I visualized. This is what I saw. Very strange, basically narration, talking us into kind of visualizing these things, and that's what I saw. Interesting tape. Felt really great. 8-5.
Okay. So,
8-5.
sorry. So again, this last lesson that we're kind of learning here, he says you want to make a connection with how information flows. And so above me, all of a sudden, I started to kind of feel all of the internet, right? I kind of visualized myself underneath it. It was very heavy, right? And then I saw, like I described there, if you're holding the world in your hand and you see all of the network that makes up the internet, and a giant hand just came down and just pulled it off like a spider web, just pulling it off of the world, right? And think about that. Think of what the world would be today, the earth. What would the earth would be today if there were no computers, servers, data centers, fiber optic cables, all the air conditioning and electricity and all that stuff. Think of all of that was removed from the earth right now. Number one, there would be a silence that went across the earth because all of those things are humming right now, and it is changing the frequency of the earth. I guarantee it. So now we remove all of that data processing from the surface of the earth and put it into a black cube. Again, I think that's some Star Wars shit, right? Wasn't there the androids or whatever? They floated around on that giant black cube. I mean, that's kind of what I was visualizing. And then seeing this black cube just floating around in our atmosphere where our satellites all are. And then that's how we connect. So our devices connect up into this, literal device in the cloud that does all the computing and gets it off of the earth. And I think the tape went on further to say, what is the earth going to look like in the future? And I think by then I was getting kind of tired. But that was kind of what I visualized. A very strange tape to be asking these questions and asking us to visualize these things. Again, this was the planning center. So I guess so. I guess that's what this tape was for, to allow us to use our imagination, to visualize things. Again, this idea of how do I harness things like fear and adrenaline and stuff? How do I create those in a more sedentary life? Again, the idea of continuing the Mind War podcast to share with others these tools for expanding human consciousness. And I did it symbolically by my body dying and mushrooms growing off of it for others to have their own magical experiences. And then that last lesson of understanding how information flowed, and just think of a new concept or something. Basically, the narrator was saying, think of something that's kind of out of this world, and that's what I saw. Like taking all of our data centers off the earth and having them float around in the atmosphere around us. I'm sure somebody's working on it. I'm sure we can all guess who. So that was tape Wave 8 Union, tape 5, the Planning Center. We really kicked ass on this report today, working through sections 25 through 31, some very deep concepts about the universe, how it's shaped, how it works. And then we went and did this amazing review of all the advanced tools and techniques that we learned in the Gateway Experience program. And it's so cool to really have what we've done and experienced be reiterated in this form, in this report that was written, I believe, decades ago by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell from the Department of Defense, Army, PSYOPs, I believe is what we talked about before, in combination with Ben Tov, the bioengineer. Just amazing to have it solidified and reiterated back to us that they're having the same experiences, they're coming to the same conclusions as we have, and really hearing from an authoritative source that this idea of manifesting our reality is possible. I mean, that's amazing. This is like basically the government telling us that it's real. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. So this is why we do the work. I'm sharing all of this stuff with all of you in the best way that I know how, digesting it and explaining it the best way that I understand it. And man, I hope all of you are enjoying this process as much as I am. I hope you're getting out of it the same thing that I am. I hope you're experiencing along with me. And man, when we get into the spiritual, when we get into the magic, we're going to put it all together. But until then, I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.